Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. Tonight, I'm going to be joined by somebody that has been on the show several times. He has not been on in a while for him by his standards because he used to be on quite often. Geoff Magliocchetti, he covers UConn for Sports Illustrated now, which is awesome. He covers high school sports for NJ.com, the New York Liberty for Nets Republic and Windsor, and the New York Jets for Jets X Factor. We're going to get into the WNBA with him, with free agency and all the big moves that these teams have made, with some big names moving and all of that. We will also talk about the upcoming NASCAR season, which this upcoming weekend is going to be the first big weekend. We have the Truck Series, we have Xfinity, and we have the Cup at Daytona. So we'll give out picks for who's going to win the championships in each sport, or I should say each league, and then we'll do picks for the Daytona 500 and the Trucks race and the Xfinity race. The Xfinity being the beef, it's what's for dinner 300, and the Trucks being the Next Era Energy 250. And then we will get into some local college hoops with Seton Hall and Rutgers, and their successes this season, especially with Rutgers of late. We got to give Rutgers credit where credit's due. We'll talk about also the New York Rangers' success so far this season, which we're both Ranger fans, so that is something that we really haven't talked about much this season, and I regret not talking about it more with Derek when I had Derek on about a month ago or so. So I'm more than welcome to be talking about fun New York hockey with the Rangers, with Geoff once he comes on. So it should be a fun show, and I am looking forward to having a fun conversation with him. Okay, now I'm joined by Geoff Magliocchetti. He covers a lot of various sports with different companies. How are you doing on this Thursday evening?
Madison, great to be here. Great to talk to you again. Keep up the great work.
Of course, you too, of course. Alrighty, so, the main thing you cover is the WNBA, or one of the main things you cover, and the team that you cover is the New York Liberty, but we'll get into the Liberty and what they've done this offseason in a little bit. But, let's start, from a broader standpoint here. What do you think has been the biggest single transaction of the WNBA offseason thus far?
Honestly, where to begin, because there's been so much movement. There's been so many things happening right now that one thing that really stood out to me, for example, was what the Seattle Storm are trying to pull off at this point. They were able to bring back Breanna Stewart, of course, might have gotten themselves, and Sue Bird might have gotten themselves into a little bit of trouble for that one. That one actually turned out to be, they believe it or not, accused the Storm of tampering, as a matter of fact, for announcing her arrival beforehand. But I'm also really intrigued by what's going on in Phoenix right now, because they seem to be planning their own kind of last run too. Rumors around Diana Taurasi have not been as prevalent as those around Sue Bird, but we're seeing the twilight years of two of the athletes that helped shape this WNBA and helped shape where they are today. Two of the arguable greatest of all time. I know it's only one greatest, but two arguable GOATs, as I like to call them. So I think it's interesting to see both teams kind of gear up for one more stretch run with each, because you see Seattle, they were able to bring back their core. They brought back Jewel Lloyd, they brought back Breanna Stewart, and you also have to look at what's going on in Phoenix right now, because they were able to, of course, bring in Tina Charles, who, of course, is best known for her endeavors with the New York Liberty, all-time leading scorer in franchise history. Things did not work out in Washington. The touted reunion of Elena Deladon and Tina Charles. Things didn't work out over there, and now she goes over to Phoenix, reunites with another former member of Liberty, Kia Nurse, who was likewise re-signed. And they were an interesting story last year in the sense that they were a 5 seed. That's right, and they were part of a surprising matchup in the WNBA Finals, going up against, of course, the Chicago Sky, who have likewise reloaded. They, of course, agreeing to terms with Vanderquigs, Allie Quigley, and Courtney Vandersloot. So I'm real interested to see so many familiar faces being retained with their respective squads at this point, and I think it's really good that we're seeing the WNBA kind of stay in its top-heavy source, because that's probably what's going to grow this game in the short term anyway. You're going to see some recognizable names in the playoffs, which, of course, are taking on an exciting new format this year, one that's going to eliminate the de facto double buys over to the semifinals, which we've seen the top two teams are, and everyone's going to play a first-round game. So interested to see that, and we're seeing a very top-heavy league right now, and the penthouse at the top of the WNBA getting very crowded at this point in time.
Absolutely. And a team that you didn't mention when we spoke about the stuff from the offseason, the Los Angeles Sparks, they made some very interesting moves this offseason. What did you make of their offseason?
Yeah, interesting to see what they did over there. Of course, Jordan Canada was signed by them. They also brought in Katie Lou Samuelson, of course, a touted UConn alumna, who things really have been kind of gone her way a little bit. It's been hard for her to carve out a role in the early stages of her WNBA career, going through Dallas and working through some tough times a little bit. But at the same time, it's good to see that she was able to land in a spot where, again, she's able to reclaim the narrative on her WNBA career. So we're all interested to see in a trade that also involved Gabby Williams going elsewhere. So interested to see what she's going to be able to make out of that. Gabby Williams, of course, going over to the Seattle Storm. So it's going to be interesting to see what she's able to do, how she's able to take advantage of this new situation. And also, LA brought in Kennedy Carter, who was traded for Erica Wheeler, or at least her contract, a couple of picks over to the Dream, and draft rights to an international player. So I feel that this is going to be really interesting to see what Carter can do in a stable situation. It reminds me a lot of what Tina Charles had to go through during her final stages with the Liberty. Of course, a lot of people know by this point, that the Liberty were on the cusp of almost, I don't want to say total annihilation, but potential, moving from the New York area. They were more or less evicted from Madison Square Garden, had to play her final games in Seafoam as a member over in Westchester County Center, which of course is a far cry from the world's most famous arena in Madison Square Garden. Carter was the same in the sense that she was really doing a good job. She was doing a good job with the hand she was dealt, but there was a lot of turmoil going on in Atlanta. Anything but a stable situation out there. So she goes to Los Angeles right now, and it's a team that really has a vision for the future. A team that's really trying to knock on the door of the aforementioned penthouse of the WNBA to get there with the Chicagos and the Las Vegases, who of course just hired Becky Hammon to be their head coach. And you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of teams trying to get in there and really try to capitalize on what's going on right now, and try to work through a playoff system that where everyone is going to play a first round. Everyone is going to play in the first round. There are no more guarantees. There are no more buys in this new playoff system. So I think you're going to see a lot of teams try to take advantage of that and really try to prove their mettle, prove their worth in this new setting. And what Los Angeles has done has set them up pretty well for success at this point in time.
Yeah, I really like that new playoff format. And something you mentioned with the Sparks and talking about them is one of the big subplots of this WNBA offseason. That is Becky Hammon being hired by the Las Vegas Aces. I was very surprised that she was hired there. I was convinced that she was going to succeed Greg Popovich in San Antonio with the Spurs. What did you make of that hire?
Yeah, likewise. I thought she was tailor-made to succeed Popovich down there. And I know you're big into the Knicks right now, Madison, and I feel that with what's going on with Thibodeau. Sorry to remind you about that.
That's
right
okay.
now, but I feel that she would have been a nice little fit in New York because everyone when trying to bring down Hammond in terms of her WNBA case, everyone in terms of her NBA case, excuse me, everyone wants to say that she has no coaching experience, she doesn't know how to do it, yada yada yada. That could not be further from the truth because a couple years back, she took the Spurs summer league team. She took them to a championship, and she received very positive reviews for what she was able to do with San Antonio's developmental group. And that made her, in my eyes anyway, so attractive to a team like the Knicks, a team that had so much youth, so much potential, and she seemed to be the perfect championship mind to come in and really start to mold them, start to help them, start to prepare them for professional endeavors. But that's neither here or there, unfortunately, from a New York perspective. She's in Vegas now, and I think it's really something that I think it's a real step in the right direction for the Aces because on paper, Las Vegas should be, the de facto favorite, the odds-on favorite for every WNBA championship leading in on out. They have the services of an MVP like Asia Wilson. They have talented assets like Dearica Hamby. They're such a deep team. And, they come up short, though, in recent years, and it hasn't worked in their favor. And this, unfortunately, has seemed to be the case for Bill Laimbeer's past few stops. And, first we saw it in New York. He had some great regular seasons with the Liberty. Unfortunately, they couldn't win the big one. The same case happened with Las Vegas. Of course, he had some WNBA success with the Detroit Shock, but unfortunately, Las Vegas is in a position where, you can't waste these years. You can't go out there and, it's not cute. It's not fun anymore to kind of contend when you have this much firepower. It's expectations, and as the great Spider-Man was told, with great power comes great responsibility. And I feel like Becky Hammon is a fantastic name, someone who's been groomed to be a coach of a championship program. And unfortunately, it didn't seem like it was going to come anytime soon. So now she comes in here with some high expectations, with some work to do. But I think if anyone's up for the challenge, it's Becky Hammon, especially with what she's been able to do over the past few years, the past decade plus we're at this point, I feel.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see her get an opportunity. And another coaching change is the New York Liberty bringing in Sandy Brandello, formerly of the Phoenix Mercury. I love the hire for the Liberty. I really, really do. Experienced head coach, championship coach. I absolutely love it. What do you make of this hire?
I love it. I love it from the sense that, the Liberty are kind of tired of, being that team like, okay, we're rebuilding right now. Last year, one of the most interesting terms that general manager Jonathan Cobb made was the, quote, hybrid rebuild. And in the sense that what he wanted to do was continue to develop under the guise of a typical rebuild, but also contend. And we saw that at several points last year. We saw what the Liberty were capable of. And they've gone out and done some really cool things out there. They've gone out and they've kind of made announcements, kind of like a little throat clearing gesture, as if to say, we're here and we're not going anywhere. We saw it last season in the sense that they were able to, clinch the final playoff spot during the final day of the season. They needed a little help, but either way, they would have gone out as winners. They had a real gutsy effort against Tina Charles and the Washington Mystics at Barclays Center. And then they gave the Mercury, Brandello's Mercury, all they could handle in the playoff game, a little 5 versus 8 matchup in the first round. They gave the Mercury all they could handle. And
I remember that game.
Like Phoenix that went on to contend for a WNBA title. They gave them all they can handle. And the hiring of Sandy Brandello and also the signing of a defending champion like Stephanie Dolson, this is a message from the Liberty. It's get used to us. We're not going anywhere. And it's great to see that, to again form that sense of stability after their basically nomadic existence for the prior 3 or 4 years out there. They had to go to Westchester. They thought they finally found some stability through the purchase by Nets owner Joseph Tsai and Clara Tsai, moving them to Barclays Center. But unfortunately, we know what happened there, and they had to play the entire 2020 season armed with 6 rookies no less, 6 or 7 rookies no less, in the Bradenton bubble. But right now they bring in a coach who, again, has championship experience, knows how to win at the ultimate levels of basketball, because Brandello herself had a very interesting season last year in the sense that she coached the Mercury and she coached the Australian women's basketball team known as the Opals, and she'll be reuniting in this sense with Beck Allen, who was just re-signed by the Liberty, and Sammy Whitcomb, who really turned out to be one of the Liberty's biggest leaders last season, also partook in the three-point shootout during the All-Star game. So it's a nice little gesture from the Liberty to hire a coach like Brandello to say, we're tired of keeping rebuild in our glossary. We're tired of saying rebuild every year. I hope you didn't play, drink every time you heard rebuild during the Liberty seasons over the past 3 years, because you would not make it through the night. Because, this move comes in now and it says we're here and we're not going anywhere. We want to be a constant presence in this league. It started last season, with a trade that brought in Whitcomb, that brought in Natasha Howard, and they also brought in the most improved player in Blaney, who went on to have an all-star campaign of their own. So I feel like these moves now, bringing in a champion like Dolson, hiring Brandello, who knows how to win at both the domestic and international levels, as well as, signing Beck Allen, re-signing Beck Allen, who's the one leftover from the team's Madison Square Garden days. Now she's going to finally be allowed to sow the rewards potentially that she helped reap. So I think that this team, they're not quite there yet. There's still a few improvements to make. I don't think this team is done quite yet. I feel something that you should keep an eye on is what they'll do with that fifth pick. I'm personally in the party in that they should perhaps trade it for a veteran asset. So we'll see what happens there. And it's unfortunate from the sense that, we've had to see some of these names who are so important to the hybrid rebuild. Names like Jasmine Jones, who was one of the most inspiring stories in recent New York memory, in the sense that she was the last pick of the first round, had to step in the Bradenton bubble when Sabrina Ionescu went down. And, she ended up earning all WNBA honors. So she unfortunately was a casualty as a first-round pick. She was a casualty of, cap space and now is with the Indiana Fever. And the Liberty also lost Nay Odom. We saw Nay Odom now. She's in Phoenix as well. She was one of the Bradenton bubble's best kept secrets, in the sense that she was a real shutdown defender and always given the responsibilities of defending the opposing team's top scorer. And it was a duty she always embraced on a constant basis. So unfortunately, she got hurt last season, never really found her way back into the New York rotation. So, that made her expendable in that sense. Whether that's fair is another conversation entirely, that she wasn't able to regain her position in the rotation, but that's neither here or there. What the Liberty have now, though, is that they have the assets, they have the pieces, they have the seeds planted for a championship contender, and I don't think they're done quite yet.
I don't think they're done either. And I really think that Sabrina Ionescu is poised for a big time breakout year coming this year. I think she's going to finally make that jump to stardom potentially this season. Do you agree?
Yes, I do, because I feel like we've seen hints of what Sabrina Ionescu is capable of. But again, there have just been so many interruptions at this point in time. I feel that it's going to sound weird, but the worst thing that could have happened to the Liberty last season was that they got off to that red hot start. Somewhere in the range of 5-1, 6-1, in that range, and it all started in their first game as full-time tenants of Barclays Center. It ended with a Sabrina Ionescu buzzer beater, and if you sent a script like that to the major studios, they would reject it for absolute lack of subtlety, I feel. And I feel that's almost one of the worst things that could have happened to the Liberty last year, because it increased expectations. It shouldered them with a lot. And people tend to forget that last year was basically a second rookie season for Sabrina Ionescu, because, of course, she was hurt, as we were talking about before. She was hurt in just her third game of the Bradenton bubble, allowed Jasmine Jones to step up. But unfortunately, that killed basically a consequence-free year for her, to develop, to work out any kinks, to work out any rookie season jitters. And then she had to do that when they came back to New York, and there were increased expectations because of the opening winning streak, because of the trade for Whitcomb and Howard, because of the signing of Magliocchetti. There were increased expectations upon her. But what the Liberty have done is that they brought in a very experienced coach to kind of supervise and work with her and help guide her on her WNBA journey. When the Liberty opted to move on from prior head coach Walt Hopkins, I didn't feel that this was going to be a move where, they'd hire, the hot assistant of the month, the attractive assistant of the month type deal. This was going to be a calculated decision where they would go out and find someone who knows how to win at this level. And that's exactly what they got in Sandy Brandello. They found someone who knows not only how to win, but to develop as well. And that's going to be real important for this team moving forward.
Absolutely. So I'm excited for the WNBA season, of course, but this weekend coming up, we got NASCAR, something that we both like a lot. We'll do Daytona 500 last. We'll go by the leagues. We'll start with the Truck Series. You have tomorrow night the Next Era Energy 250 tomorrow on Fox Sports 1. Who do you think will win not the race, but the championship for the truck this season?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens in the Truck Series this year, because when you look at the lower series of what's going on, you look in the lower series of the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series too. You're going to see some talented drivers, I feel, miss out on the playoffs, because we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of interesting guys. We're seeing a lot of talented drivers go to some talented places, and there is no shortage of storylines in this going forward. You got to take a look at, for example, John Hunter Nemechek. He'll be returning to, of course, Kyle Busch Motorsports. He was my pick last year, and I really think that he's going to be back with a vengeance this year, because things didn't end well for him, last season, and I think he'll be back with a vengeance. He's really looking for something to prove moving forward, and we saw last year. He finished 30, won 5 races last year. He's going to have something to prove out there. I think we're also going to keep an eye on. You look throughout the rest of the standings right now. I really do want to keep an eye on Chandler Smith as well, another Kyle Busch Motorsports driver. I had him in my Final Four as a rookie last year, but unfortunately he ran into some trouble in the playoffs, and he ran into some bad luck. I remember there was a dirt race last year where they had to embark on. It was about 4 or 5 different green-white checkered finishes, and he held the lead on every one except the last one. So that was just a tough break for him. But I think with a year under his belt, he's going to really embrace it and really move things forward. So definitely keep an eye on him. I also want to keep an eye on Front Row Motorsports is going to bring out a new truck this year in the 38. Zane Smith will be someone to keep an eye on. He kind of struggled last year after a breakthrough rookie year, so keep an eye on him moving forward. But I really think the driver to watch this time around is John Hunter Nemechek, because I feel that J.H. Nemechek's racing evolution, it's a bit flawed, because I feel like he was thrust into the Cup Series too early. Had a really good time on the Xfinity circuit, and then was put into the 38 over Front Row, 38 Ford, now driven by Todd Gilliland. I feel that he was thrust in there a little early, but now he really has something to prove down there. He really has something to fight for, and I'm interested to see how he fights back this year. And of course, we can't forget our champion Ben Rhodes, who got to a real good start last season and bookended it with, of course, a championship at Phoenix. So really interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, me too. If I had to make a good pick for the Truck Series Championship for 2022, I'm looking at. I thought about Ben Rhodes for a potential repeat, but repeating is so hard to do.
Really is, especially at the lower levels.
I was thinking of someone else that's been a good driver over the past few years. Austin Hill's pretty good. I was thinking about him as a potential champion for the truck.
Yeah, he's moving over to a new ride over with Spire Motorsports this year, and it kind of surprised me that Austin Hill has stuck around. I mean, I believe it was during the 2020 season. He led a majority of it. He was driving the 61, but he was driving the 16 back then, and it was unfortunate. Again, he's another one of those guys who kind of was done in by the playoff format, which I feel is a necessary evil in the world of NASCAR, especially when you need to compete with football in the 4 months. But that's another conversation entirely. I feel like that he'll be back with vengeance. I feel that he's a great representative to showcase the growing work that Spire is doing. We've seen Spire rise through the ranks over the past couple of years. Of course, they had Justin Haley win that Cup race at Daytona not too long ago. Rain shortened, but still a win's a win. They've expanded their Cup program. They now have 2 drivers there, and now they're going into the truck program with not just a very talented driver in Austin Hill, but a very talented crew chief in Kevin Mannion as well. So they're definitely something to keep an eye on. And it's, again, like I said, you're going to see some very talented drivers miss the playoffs on each of these levels. So, like, you could look at some of the names who are poised to miss out. I mean, you could easily make a case for someone from the Kyle Busch Motorsports stable missing out on this. You look at some of the other guys who are coming back in this. I know Matt DiBenedetto, for example, he's going to be back. He's going to be coming back with Rackley War for in the number 25 truck. So he could miss out on it. But even though I feel that he could disrupt the playoff picture a little bit. You look at you look at Tyler Ankrum. He can miss it too. He's at the cusp of the playoff standings. So I feel that there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of potential for things to go crazy at both the truck and Xfinity levels. But again, you do have some very talented. It's like the WNBA. It's very top heavy. You have some very talented guys up there who are not going to go down without a fight. And it's something that you should be able to see all 3 levels and really enjoy what's going on down there.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Xfinity Series, and that race is Saturday evening at 5 o'clock. I'm thinking about a couple drivers to pick to potentially win the Xfinity Championship. What are your expectations for Xfinity this season?
Once again, I expect some very talented drivers to miss out because, we just got the announcement this week that Ty Gibbs will be running the full season. Of course, he burst on the scene last year in that shared that 54 Toyota with guys like Kyle Busch, guys like Ty Dillon, but he really managed to make an impression, won several races last year, and now he's going to be a full-time driver in there. But he is not alone. We're going to see several guys, really contend out there. You want to talk about a guy who really made a case for himself on the truck series circuit over the past years, and now played that into some really good success. Look at Sheldon Creed. He is taking over for Myatt Snyder in the number 2 Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet. He should be someone to keep an eye on for sure because, he should be someone to keep an eye on for sure because he was a champion at the Truck Series level. Took advantage last year in 2020, of Austin Hill dropping out during the playoffs. He took the title that year. So you want to take a look. You want to take a look at him, for example. You also want to take a look at Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is not the only young driver who's taking over an elite ride full time. You're going to see at the Junior Motorsports taking over for Michael Annett in the number 1. Sam Mayer is going to be going over there. Mayer, of course, he won a Truck Series race as a teenager, and now will be taking over Xfinity Series duties on a full-time basis in the 1. And of course, Junior Motorsports, they also have 2 very experienced Xfinity guys in Justin Allgaier and Josh Berry, who was a part-time driver in the 8 ride last year, took over the 1 as well when Annette was injured. But those are guys who are going to be worth keeping an eye on as well. So there's so many storylines right now in the Xfinity Series. I mean, look at Kaulig too. I mean, there's Kaulig Racing, who of course owns the 10, 11, and the 16, because there's so much attention being dedicated to Kaulig's leap to the Cup Series level, and rightfully so. They won the Indianapolis Road Course last year with AJ Allmendinger behind the wheel, and I feel that was no fluke. It's really inspiring to see what they've been able to do from humble beginnings, and now they make the leap to the Cup Series. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that, what they're doing. They're going to be debuting Justin Haley in the 31 and a hodgepodge of talented drivers in their card 16, which Daniel Hemrick will drive this week in the Cup Series level. But you go back to the Xfinity Series, Landon Castle, who's really made a career out of making something out of nothing with his rides. Landon Castle will be taking over the 10. Daniel Hemrick, the defending Xfinity Series champion, will be picking up where Haley left off in the 11. And AJ Allmendinger, who has helped reclaim the narrative on his own NASCAR career, very Elliott Sadler-esque, if you ask me.
Ooh.
He'll be returning to the 16. So I'm interested to see what happens. And Austin Hill, again, he'll also be joining the Xfinity Series. He'll be driving the 21 for Richard Childress. Definitely someone to keep an eye on. So he's taking over Spire's truck, the 7, for at least Daytona, and he's ready to take on the 21 moving forward. So I'm interested to see where this all pans out because, again, you're going to see some very talented drivers miss out on the Xfinity Series playoffs. And you look at some of the guys that had to, take a de facto demotion for this. Jeff Burton, he's going over to Our Motorsports after driving for Kaulig last season. Mike Snyder, he's going over to Jordan Anderson. These are teams that really, I hesitate to call it downgrade, but there's no denying they don't have the budgets of again, a Kaulig or a Childress out there. They really managed to make something out of nothing. I mean, look at Brandon Brown at Talladega last year. Those guys, that was a well-deserved win at Talladega. So I feel like that there are some very talented drivers that are going to miss out on the Xfinity Series, and the future of NASCAR could not be brighter moving forward.
I agree with you. And two guys you mentioned while talking about Xfinity really intrigued me this year. Matt Snyder and Justin Haley. Haley from a standpoint of, I feel like Haley was a little bit of a disappointment last year. I mean, he did finish in top 5 sometimes, but I feel like he disappointed last year. And Matt Snyder was somebody on the flip side I felt like got better.
Snyder was an interesting case in the sense that he took over a 2-car that was, again, driven by a hodgepodge of drivers in 2020, and he got to a good start, won an early race, and then kind of fell off a little bit. I mean, there was some bad luck on his end involved a little bit, but unfortunately, he never truly fulfilled what Childress was trying to do in resurrecting the 2-car as a full-time championship contending program. And there's an opportunity for him to make a statement over at Jordan Anderson, one of those small teams that really knows how to make something out of nothing. And it's just unfortunate things weren't able to pan out. But when a truck series driver like Sheldon Creed is ready to make the leap, you have to pounce on that. And I think and not just Sheldon Creed, but Austin Hill as well. You really have to pounce on that and move forward and get things rolling in that direction. So I don't blame Childress for what they did in that ride. Haley, on the other hand, it's unfortunate in his case because, again, it's almost like what we were talking about with the Liberty before. Winning was almost a curse in his sense because once you have a Cup Series win, there is going to be a proverbial target on your back. And it's unfortunate what's happened. Sometimes it's really unfortunate to see what's happened to some of the Kaulig cars. They've run some bad luck over recent years. But, but now he's moved up to the Cup Series. He'll be driving the 31 now for Kaulig. And, I feel like he's a really good face of that program in the Cup Series moving forward because he was another guy, managed to make something of nothing in his Cup Series opportunities, managed to be in the right place at the right time, assisted with Kaulig's rise along with guys like Allmendinger and Ross Chastain was another one. Good to see Ross Chastain get a bit of an elite ride over at Trackhouse, who will now have the powers of a playoff Cup Series team. And one thing I really like from the Xfinity Series these days, you're not seeing a lot of guys being yanked up to the cup level too early because there's one guy we shockingly haven't mentioned yet. Look at Noah Gregson, who of course is partaking in the Daytona 500. He'll drive the number 62 car for Beard Motorsports, make his Cup Series debut for the 500 on Sunday. But right now, he's going through his 3rd full-time season in the number 9 of Junior Motorsports. And, he's a very polarizing driver, a guy who has, the right amount of attitude, the right amount of aggressiveness for a NASCAR level, the type of guy you either love or you love to hate. So I feel that it's great to see these guys are developing their powers more. You used to see a lot more often, guys after one good season would be yanked up to the Cup Series level. But you also see some of the rare cases, folks come in because in my opinion, I might get some heat for this, but I hesitate sometimes to call Danica Patrick a bust at the NASCAR level because her NASCAR career was marred by, ironically, too much speed. She did not get a full-time series, a full-time season at the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the nationwide series level. She was immediately thrust into a Cup ride. It was just unfair. Her NASCAR career was doomed from the start. But you see a guy like Gregson, who's in his 3rd season, number 9, and really starting to make something of himself, really start to contend for a championship, to mature, to work out better. I feel that, and he'll get a chance to develop that closer instinct that we've seen lacking from guys at this level. So I really have to praise what teams are doing right now, and they're really starting to treat the Xfinity Series like it's the developmental league it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree with you about the Xfinity Series and where that's going. All right, so the Cup Series. This is the big one. The Daytona 500 is Sunday.
Yes.
Who do you think has a realistic shot of winning this race? I know there's a lot of people that are in play to win, but who's your favorite to win the Daytona 500? You would say.
Honestly, if we went over all of them, we'd be here literally all night.
Yeah.
Especially with a new car, coming into the proceedings right now. One
Right.
thing I've noticed in the early stage of the practice is that the Fords have been really fast. They've done a really good job. I've seen a lot of the Penske guys. They made a name for themselves. I'm not sure if you saw, but tonight during the blue-green dual qualifying races, we saw Brad Keselowski in his new opportunity. He and the number 6 Ford. The Fords had a really good strategy in the first duel tonight, and we saw Keselowski in the 6 take that, beating out Ryan Blaney in the 12 and Chris Buescher in the 14. So I feel like the Fords will really have something to prove on Sunday, and that brings me to who I feel the favorite could be. I do want to highlight Ryan Blaney in that 12 car because it's shocking to believe that he doesn't have more wins than he does. It shocks me every time I see that because part of that is bad luck. He has been in the wrong place in the wrong time a few times, but he has managed to be one of the most consistent drivers over the past years. He has run over 200 races in his career and yet only has 7 wins, and that's downright shocking to me because he was another guy who really made the most out of some mid-range equipment over with the Wood brothers in the 21, took him to victory lane. So, and I feel that he has something to prove this year. He wants to prove that he's capable of making that leap because he almost gets lost in the Penske mix a little bit because he doesn't have that championship title just yet, like Logano does, like Brad Keselowski did when he was in the 2. And now in the 2 is Austin Cindric, and now Ryan has something really to prove. And I feel that he wants to go out there. He really wants to get out to a fast start this season. He's my pick right now, Ryan Blaney in the 12, because I just think a combination of the Fords and a combination of the Fords having some speed. I want to keep an eye on Joey Logano as well. I believe he just won his own blue-green vacation duel right now. Yes, he did.
Yep.
And I feel that Blaney will have something to prove on Sunday. He wants to prove that he can't be just a good driver. He wants to be a great driver. I think winning the Daytona 500 would be a fantastic first start to that. We know how close he came not so long ago, back in 2020, but unfortunately that was marred by the unfortunate incident of the Ryan Newman accident. Denny Hamlin went on to win. So, and obviously don't want to downplay the Newman incident by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, thank God he was fine and whatnot. It was just a tough break on both sides for both of them. So I feel like a combination of both the Fords having some speed and Blaney having something to prove. Remember, he did win the 400-mile event back in August at Daytona. So I feel that he will be the guy you really want to keep an eye on Sunday.
Yeah. I think that he has a shot to win. I don't know who I'm going to pick to win the 500 yet. You'll probably hear that on my podcast on the regular show tomorrow. But someone that intrigues me this year for the Cup Series is someone that was in Xfinity 2 years ago, was started full-time last year. I'm really intrigued by Chase Briscoe. I think that he could be the breakout driver of the year as well as Ryan Blaney. What do you make of Chase Briscoe?
I like Chase a lot because he was dominating the 2020 season. He was at the 2020 Xfinity Series season, driving the 98 for Stewart-Haas Racing, and really inspiring story. He and his wife Marissa have been through a lot, and he won 9 races in 2020, and he really seemed to be getting it together by the end of last season, taking over for Clint Boyer in the number 14, and it's a really good story for him because he grew up idolizing Tony Stewart as a kid, so it kind of felt like that team had some speed toward the end of last season. There was the unfortunate incident at what happened at Indianapolis when he made the most ill-advised pass through the grass, going for the win against Denny Hamlin. But at the same time, he ran into some bad luck toward the end of the year, but he was really starting to show some speed, really starting to show that he kind of was starting to grasp the Cup Series level and get things on the right track. He got up to a slow start, but one thing to keep an eye on, I feel like he can steal one of the road course races this year because two of his three top 10s came at road courses last season, including a 9th at New York's very own Watkins Glen, and of course there was the Indianapolis road course incident. So I feel that he can really steal one there because with a new car, with the new Gen 6 vehicle, there is an opportunity to see so many different winners this year. Everyone's kind of even keeled right now. Everyone's kind of on the right path. Everyone's kind of leveled at this point. Oh, I was mistaken. It was actually Chris Buescher that won the Blue Green Vacation Duel. So good for him. A real nice start for 77. Hey, it's a Ford for the 17 team. Hey, it's a Ford. So close enough.
Yep.
No, not really. But I'm really interested to see what Chase is able to do this year, because he was really starting to grasp the speed and really starting to get things rolling in that 14 car last season. He was starting to get it going. And again, if there was ever a year where we can get the proverbial 26 different winners, 26 plus different winners, not 26. Oh my goodness, that's how many regular season races there are. 16 plus regular season winners. This might be the year, because the new car, the next gen car, really starts to even the field out a little bit. Everyone's getting started, and we see it in the sense that everyone kind of took it a little easy during the first duel today, because no one even has a backup car yet for the for the next gen races. I guess we could call it this gen, since it's debuting finally on Sunday. So I feel that this could be the year, but I think Briscoe is talented enough. He really taught himself a few things during his Cup Series rookie year, to the point where he won't have to rely on points. He can get a win this year, but if it didn't come to points, he would be safe. I could see him totally finishing in the top 16 this year. But again, I feel like there's several contending drivers. I feel like Eric Jones, who's starting to get a grasp of what he was doing on the 43. I feel like he could be an underdog driver. Someone from the Trackhouse duo of Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. Suarez showed speed himself, showed some speed on his own when Trackhouse was his own team, of course, formed by recording artist Pitbull. He showed some speed last year, had a really good Bristol dirt race, but now they have the resources, having purchased the NASCAR assets Chip Ganassi Racing, which has of course left the sport, formerly fielding the 1 driven by Kurt Busch, and the 42 formerly driven by Ross Chastain. Chastain was retained. He'll drive a rebranded 1 this year for Trackhouse, so I wouldn't be surprised to see any of them make it. But I was really inspired by what Briscoe was able to do in the latter stages of his rookie year, and he should no doubt be able to be in contention to earn his first win this year. First Cup Series win, that is.
I absolutely agree with you. Now we're going to do some rapid fire things. Two of New Jersey's college basketball teams are having success, especially one in Piscataway, New Jersey, Rutgers University. And then there's Seton Hall, which is all the way up in Newark. Well, they play in Newark, but they are in Montclair. What do you make of the seasons for Rutgers and Seton Hall thus far?
Yeah, I got to say, Rutgers is so interesting to me, because they are doing the deck was kind of stacked against them from the start, because when you commit a college basketball sin as egregious as losing to a team like Lafayette at home, they also keep on, they lost to Paul Orleans and UMass, as a matter of fact.
Oh my
and
God!
I honestly don't get this team, because they lose those games, then they go on to beat Purdue twice. They go on to beat Purdue. Opportunity to do it twice comes Sunday at 5:30. And then they win 4 games in a row against ranked competition. And all of this comes after they lose to Northwestern in overtime and only manage to beat Nebraska by 2. So I don't know how to solve this team. But having said that, I feel like the committee should put a bigger emphasis on their wins, because the wins show what you are capable of. College basketball is interesting in the sense that, for at least 5 minutes of every game, anyone can beat anyone. It's all a matter of how you embrace that momentum and how you push it moving forward. That's how teams manage to pull upsets in the NCAA tournament. But beating teams, the good wins, the Tier 1 wins, that shows what you are capable of. And I think that is what the NCAA committee should look forward to. So I think they have more than, reconciled the losses to Lafayette, the losses to DePaul, the losses to UMass, the losses to Northwestern, because it's hard enough to do that in a normal year. When you look at a year like this, where you have to deal with, where you still have to deal with postponements, you have to deal with cancellations, that speaks volumes about what this team is built of. So I feel like Rutgers should be in. Seton Hall, they've been a bit disappointing this year. They kind of, they kind of started, they kind of stopped. They lost a tough one to UConn last night, as a matter of fact. But at the same time, I think it's hard to deny their spot at this point because they have some nice solid wins as well, especially in the early going. They topped Texas, they topped Michigan when they were still the number 4 team in the nation. Gave Ohio State a heck of a game as well. So I think you can expect to see both of these teams on your NCAA tournament bracket somewhere in, I think anywhere between, the 6 to 10 range in terms of seeding. That would be perfect for both of these groups at this point.
I agree. I think that Rutgers has been like the more interesting team recently because of the upset wins and such, but it's easy to think that, or it's easy to forget that they lost bye games earlier there to like Lafayette, and they lost to UMass, and then they lost to Northwestern, and then Seton Hall has just been quietly decent right there in the Big East, and even St. John's too is been hot of late as well. So very interesting to say the least with college basketball. Okay, our Rangers are in overtime right now, 2-2 against the Red Wings. What do you make of their success this season?
I think it's really interesting what the Rangers have been able to do because I think from the get-go, you can, no matter what happens the rest of the way, barring a ridiculous collapse, you can call this season a success for the Rangers because I'll put it this way, with David Quinn last season, here's the thing, a team that has Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Adam Fox. Last year you still had Pavel Buchnevich. When you have skaters like that, Ryan Strome. When you have skaters like that, all in different periods of their respective primes, you cannot be as far removed from the playoff picture as you were. When you have guys like that, your season cannot be over. With 10 games to go, you can't be playing 6 or 7 meaningless games to close out the slate. I don't care if it's a short season, but what Gallant has done, he's made the Rangers an essential playoff team. He has included them in that top 8 because you look at the top 8 in the East right now, it's more or less settled at this point. I mean, I really like what this Detroit team has been able to do. I feel that if center ice / ESPN Plus rankings are a thing, the Red Wings are one of my go-to teams in terms of watching, out-of-market hockey games. I really like what they've been able to do with this young core that they've had. They're really able to push the envelope and move forward with their rebuild. They're about 2 years ahead of schedule. I feel like they've said that on the broadcast tonight. But this season is a success for the Rangers in the sense that they're a safe playoff team, as they well should be. You shouldn't get really credit for doing things that you're supposed to do, but it goes to show the Gerard Gallant effect. So Gallant, excuse me, not Gallant, but the Gerard Gallant effect. So I feel that that season is a success from that standpoint. Having said that, they are relying on Igor Shesterkin too much, and it's no different from the glorious Henrik Lundqvist era that just ended. Glorious in the sense that we got to watch, one of the greatest goalies in NHL history do his thing for over a decade, nearly 2. But it's unfortunate in the sense that that's not sustainable if you want to win a Stanley Cup moving forward. Now, granted, sometimes I look at this team and I regret the fact that Lundqvist was never able to play. Lundqvist in his prime was never able to play with a guy like Adam Fox in his prime. With a Jacob Trouba playing like this, he's personally one of my contenders for the McDonald Award. I feel like that he should be a contender out there. I think it's good to see though that the Rangers are embracing these expectations and they find ways to win games because the Quinn version of the Rangers, when they go down to a team like Boston yesterday, when they play and need 13 minutes to get a shot on goal. Quinn era Rangers, that's probably over. But this Rangers team finds a way to remain in games, and they find ways, more often than not, at least so far, knock on wood, to pull it off. So I feel that you can acknowledge that this team is flawed a little bit, but you can also appreciate the ride they're going on. I think you're capable of doing both. That's the issue we've had in far too many realms in both sports and politics and everything. People become too single issue oriented. If you support one thing, if you cheer one thing, that means you must like the other thing. But I think there is a case of being a balanced Ranger fan. Now, having said that, I feel that almost they should stay put this season because until further notice, the East still belongs to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And there are other contenders out there that, really seem well better paced to, compete for a cup right now. This was never supposed to be, the cup final year, the year that they went for it all. But the Rangers are not in a position, at least right now, to go for that, say, Martin St. Louis move like they did in 2014. They're not the proverbial single move away from finally pulling off, a trip to the Cup Finals. So I almost feel like they should stay put. There's no one out there, I feel, that lifts them to bona fide Cup contender. There's no one out there that would make them the automatic favorite in the Eastern Conference, because not only do you have to deal with Tampa Bay, but you also have to deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. You have to deal with the Florida Panthers. You have to deal with the the Pittsburgh Penguins for the umpteenth year in a row. There's nobody out there. There's no contender out there. There's no trade candidate out there that puts you over the top, I feel. So if you're the Rangers right now, my advice would be enjoy the ride, do this, improve, and develop. Don't go crazy. Don't break open the bank for anyone right now, because there's no one out there that puts you over the top, at least on paper. Now, look, get to the playoffs, anything can happen, but we'll go from there. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline for sure, whether they stand put or not. And last thing, Tom Brady obviously announces, or we think he announced, that he is retired. We say we think because there's so many rumors and whatnot about that he might come back and he might just be leaving the Bucs. What do you make of this Tom Brady situation? And ultimately, what do you think ends up happening? Do you think he stays retired or comes back?
Yeah, I mean, you better post this immediately, because for all we know, there could be another Brady rumor that comes out. But trust me, that's going to be very annoying, because when every good quarterback retires now, we see it all the time. Whenever a starting quarterback, a major quarterback, stubs his toe, we're like, oh, is so-and-so going to come out of retirement? We saw it with Tony Romo. We saw it with Drew Brees. We see it with all these guys. It's going to be downright insufferable when it happens. When it happens, and Brady is up for debate. Now, having said that with Brady, it shocks me that he opted to walk away at this point in time, because Brady always struck me as someone who was almost who wouldn't go at. It's a combination of the two things, because Brady struck me as both someone who wanted to go out on top, which obviously Tampa Bay did not do, but at the same time, he was almost too proud to go out on top. He was going to keep going for as long as he could. So it's shocking in the sense that you can't watch the second half of the Buccaneers-Rams divisional playoff game and not tell me Tom Brady had one more year of that left in him. I feel it's shocking that he opted to kind of, still leave when he was still hot, still leave when he was making a difference on an NFL level. So I feel that it's such a cop-out, but I do want to say never, because there will always be a competitive inch. There will be a competitive itch within Brady, and it never will truly go away. I mean, the guy will be 65, and I'm sure someone will be begging him to come out of retirement to be the starter. I can't predict the future, but that wouldn't shock me in the least. So I feel that, the rumors will persist, but I feel that for now, Brady will stay retired. Now, look, ask me again in a month or two. Let's see what happens in training camp when Tampa Bay is struggling to replace him with a hodgepodge of, Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask. Let's see what happens in that regard. Maybe Gronkowski will talk to him. Let's see what happens. But for now, I have to feel that Brady is ready to step away, because, you can't tell me watching the end of that game, watching the end of that Buccaneer Ram game, that he didn't have enough left in him for another year. I feel that, if he was going to come back, he would have come back, just to spite everyone who said he couldn't. So for now, I feel that Brady is serious about this.
I think Brady is serious about this for the time being as well. So, Geoff, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Maybe we'll have you on in April for when the Rangers are most likely going to be in the playoffs, and for when the WNBA is going to start.
Madison, I'd like that a lot. Keep up the great work. You're doing a heck of a job.
Thanks, you too, my friend. See you soon.